They call it the Long Night, a night that lasted an entire generation, when kings froze to death in their castles, and women chose to smother their babies rather than watch them starve. It was in this darkness that the White Walkers appeared for the first time, devastating cities and kingdoms, riding on their dead horses. An unprecedented alliance between the first men of Westeros and the children of the forest. This alliance made it possible to drive the creatures back to their home, to the far north, the lands of eternal winter. Much later, the Targaryens traveled from Essos to Dragonstone to reunite Westeros under the Kingdom of the Seven Crowns. 3 centuries passed, and today the reign of the Mad King has just collapsed. The rebel Robert Baratheon seized the Iron Throne by force and became the new king. At the beginning of the series, 8 families are introduced to us, each subject to their new sovereign, Robert Baratheon, the king of the Seven Kingdoms. He sits in the capital, King's Landing, on his Iron Throne, the symbol of his royal power. But in the north, for a millennium, the wall has stood, a gigantic wall of ice that prevents the White Walkers from invading Westeros again. Far from the quarrels of the south, the Night's Watch knows that this is the real war. Because the seasons last for several years in Westeros, and summer always seems too short to prepare for winter. When the sun hides for years on end, and darkness leaves room only for fear, and if the cold hasn't finished you off yet, you might have to feed on the remains of your comrades to try to defend yourself against the White Walkers. The North must remember the long night. Nothing is more important than preparing for it, especially since at the start of our adventure, winter is coming. This is the very first plotline of Game of Thrones, because there are rumors circulating that the White Walkers have returned. We're going to follow Jon Snow, the illegitimate son of the Lord of the North, Ned Stark, who joins the Night's Watch, the military order tasked with defending the wall. The second plotline takes place in Essos, with Daenerys Targaryen. I mentioned the fall of the Mad King. His name was Daenerys Targaryen. Daenerys and her brother Viserys are the last surviving members of their house. They had to flee Westeros and find exile in Essos after their family's downfall. But Viserys refuses to give up on anything. He knows he is the rightful heir to the Seven Kingdoms. So to reclaim the Iron Throne, he doesn't hesitate to forcibly marry off his sister. To Khal Drogo, the powerful leader of the Dothraki, a people of warrior horsemen in Essos. In exchange, he hopes to gain his enormous army, but his arrogance will cost him his life. Khal Drogo will crown him in the Dothraki way. Daenerys then grows up among her new people and her husband. She learns their customs, their language, and gains power and respect. With the help of Jorah Mormont, who had once sworn allegiance to Viserys, she is even given 3 dragon eggs, which are believed to have turned to stone over time. But it is truly after the death of Khal Drogo that Daenerys officially earns everyone's respect. She emerges unscathed from her husband's funeral pyre with the 3 eggs hatched. The legend of the Mother of Dragons is born. The third storyline is therefore the Iron Throne. And as I was saying, at the beginning of the first season, the king is Robert Baratheon. You should know that the king is always assisted in ruling Westeros by someone called the Hand of the King, a sort of prime minister, if you will. The king's hand was named Jon Arryn. He has just died. So Robert goes to Winterfell to offer his old friend, the Lord of the North, Ned Stark, the position of his new hand. When Ned arrives in the south, in the capital, he realizes the scheming going on around the king. In reality, Robert's wife, Cersei Lannister, is having a secret relationship with her twin brother, Jaime Lannister. So it becomes clear that the king's eldest son, Joffrey Baratheon, is actually the incestuous child of Jaime and Cersei. The heir to the Iron Throne is therefore a Lannister and not a Baratheon. And strangely enough, a little while later, poor Robert dies in a hunting accident in which Cersei doesn't seem entirely innocent. And there you have it. The Lannister family is now in power, with Joffrey Lannister as the new king. But of course, there are dissenters he needs to silence. Robert's other sons, but also Ned Stark, who figured out the Lannisters' secret. With Littlefinger's help, he tries to reveal everything, but he's accused of conspiracy. And just when he was counting on his support, Littlefinger betrays him. Ned is then arrested and executed. War is declared between the Lannisters and the Starks, dragging the whole kingdom into it. Ned's daughters, whom he had brought with him to the capital, find themselves left to fend for themselves. At the Wall, Jon Snow befriends Samwell Tarly, and they begin their training in the Night's Watch. Jon is even appointed steward because of his skills. But one night, the corpse of a ranger comes back to life and attacks him. This time he saw it with his own eyes, and realizes that the wall is their last line of defense against them. He is determined to learn more, and they take part in an expedition beyond the wall, under the command of Commander Mormont. In Season 2, Joffrey Lannister's rise to the throne plunges the kingdom into what is known as the War of the Five Kings. Even though his grandfather, the wealthy and powerful Tywin Lannister, tries to guide him by appointing his son, the clever Tyrion Lannister, as Hand of the King. And yes, because the legitimate claimants to the throne have no intention of letting it go without a fight. The first king in this war is of course Joffrey, a tyrannical, childish, and sadistic king. The second and third are Robert Baratheon's brothers, Renly and Stannis. While Stannis is much more determined to reclaim what is rightfully his. He quickly gets rid of Renly by assassinating him. He even tries to take King's Landing by force, following the advice of his Red Priestess Melisandre. But it's a crushing defeat, and the losses are very heavy. The fourth king is Balon Greyjoy, the king of the Iron Islands. As for him, though, he's just a bitter man trying to take advantage of the chaos to carve out a place for himself. But he's really just useless. The last king, and not the least, is Robb Stark, the eldest Stark, who has earned the respect of the Northerners and is starting to win battles against the Lannisters. He has been proclaimed king in the North. He is determined to avenge his father, but also to save his sisters, Sansa Stark, betrothed to Joffrey, and Arya Stark, on the run under a false identity. But there's also his brother Bran Stark, who stayed behind at Winterfell. Because when Robert came to ask Ned to become his hand, Bran accidentally caught Cersei and Jaime in the act. Jaime didn't hesitate to push him from the tower to keep their relationship secret. Luckily for him, Bran survived. Well, he forgot what he saw, but more importantly, he lost the use of his legs. We'll come back to him in just a moment. Just know that he starts having strange, almost prophetic dreams and discovers he has powers. Like connecting his mind to his giant wolf to control it. He flees Winterfell with his brother Rickon, thanks to his friends Hodor and Osha, a wildling woman who had been held prisoner at Winterfell. The wildlings are the free folk who live beyond the wall, and Jon Snow is about to meet them, as well as their king, Mance Rayder. He is preparing to cross south of the wall, because the growing threat of the White Walkers puts them in danger. In Season 3, Robb continues to gain ground against the Lannisters. But Tywin is not the most powerful man in Westeros by chance. He manages to convince the Stark allies, Walder Frey and Lord Bolton, to betray him. A wedding feast is organized to reconcile the two houses. Robb was supposed to marry one of Lord Frey's daughters, but he did not keep his oath. Lord Frey is a vengeful old hypocrite, and he takes advantage of this opportunity to kill Robb and his men by surprise. It's a real massacre. It will be known as the Red Wedding. The reign of the king in the north ends brutally, and Arya, who was about to be reunited with her family, only has time to see Lord Frey's men celebrating their victory with her brother's body, beheaded. Fortunately, she is whisked away before being noticed by Sandor Clegane, the Hound. This trauma will change her profoundly. She is now ready to do anything to survive and avenge her family. In King's Landing, Tywin controls everything. After Robb's death, he even decides that Tyrion must marry Sansa to secure control over the Stark inheritance. For his part, Joffrey is preparing to marry Margaery Tyrell. She's young, beautiful, and intelligent, which allows her to manipulate public opinion and the young king. Cersei may have found a rival worthy of her. Bran sets out for the north. He is guided by his visions. He must find a certain three-eyed raven beyond the wall to fulfill his destiny. Speaking of the far north, Jon is there as well. He has joined the Free Folk and even earned their trust. But in the end, he will still betray them. He has sworn an oath to the Night's Watch. He is preparing his own for the imminent attack. Wildlings who are fleeing the north. On the other continent, Daenerys continues her conquest. In Astapor, she negotiates for an army of unsullied, highly trained slave soldiers. But once the deal is made, she betrays the slavers and orders Drogon, the most powerful of her dragons, to destroy them. She then gives all the slaves the choice to join her army or remain free. She earns the title of Breaker of Chains, and with this powerful army, capable of rivaling the greatest forces in Westeros, she finally becomes a real threat in the Game of Thrones. Season 4 starts off with a bang. During the wedding feast between Joffrey and Margaery, the king is poisoned. Cersei is furious. She immediately accuses Tyrion, who had served the glass of wine that cost the king his life. He's the perfect scapegoat. He is arrested on the spot, awaiting a trial organized by the new king, Tommen Baratheon, Joffrey's younger brother. But the trial is completely rigged. It's simply an excuse to get rid of Tyrion once and for all, who once again has no one to defend him. Even though his brother Jaime does his best to lighten the sentence, Tyrion finds himself forced to request a trial by combat in an attempt to save himself. Only Prince Oberyn Martell, who had traveled here as the representative of Dorne, agrees to fight for the half-man. He wants to avenge his sister, who was killed by the Mountain, the most powerful and cruel knight in Westeros. He works for the Lannisters, so it's certain that he will be their champion. Amidst all this chaos, there is one person who does not answer the call. And Cersei hasn't missed that. Sansa managed to escape at the time of Joffrey's assassination with Littlefinger's help. But now it's the day of the fight. Oberyn is masterful. He brings the mountain to the ground in record time, but blinded by his desire for revenge, he demands that Tywin publicly confess to having ordered the abuse and murder of his sister. Just as Oberyn thought the mountain was dead, he surprises him, grabs his head, and splits it open like a mere watermelon. At that moment, all hope seems lost for Tyrion. He returns to his cell to live out the last day of a condemned man. But Jaime arrives as a hero and frees his brother with the help of Varys, the Master of Whispers. But Tyrion has one last thing to do before escaping. His father was going to have him executed, even though he knows he's innocent. Innocent. All the hatred he has endured his whole life, he must take his revenge. He finds Tywin on his chamber pot and shoots him twice in the heart with a crossbow. A rather ridiculous death for the most powerful man in Westeros. After that, Tyrion flees with Varys, taking a ship to Essos, intending to join Daenerys Targaryen. He believes that helping her will bring a better future to the kingdom of Westeros. And a lot has happened on her side as well. After freeing many cities, including Meereen, she learns that she is seen as a conqueror, not as a queen. Yet she puts an end to slavery everywhere she goes. She then decides to stop conquering and to rule instead, except it's not that simple. The former slave masters make her life hell, not to mention those dragons that are becoming uncontrollable. Tyrion and Varys will no doubt be a great help to her, but that will only happen if she accepts them. As for Arya, she also arrives in Essos. She left the Hound for dead after a duel and set sail for Braavos. She is going to join the Faceless Men, the servants of the many-faced god. They devote their lives to killing those chosen by their god, changing their appearance using the faces of their previous victims. In the north, Lord Bolton and his son Ramsay continue to move their pieces forward to take control of the region. Tommen, the new king of the Seven Kingdoms, will then be of great help by appointing Lord Bolton as the new Warden of the North. Beyond the wall, Bran has finally managed to reach the Three-Eyed Raven. He is an old man who had foretold his arrival, and who promises to teach him how to master his new powers. Jon, for his part, managed to repel the wildlings' assault with the Night's Watch. After a bloody battle, he goes alone to meet Mance, north of the wall, to negotiate a truce and allow the free folk to cross south of the wall. Unfortunately, during the negotiations, they are interrupted by Stannis, who has returned and crushes Mance's army, taking him prisoner. He was brought here by Melisandre's omens. Stannis needs Jon's support to take back Winterfell from the Boltons and strengthen his army to seize the Iron Throne. But in Season 5, Jon refuses to support Stannis, because now he has been elected Lord Commander of the Night's Watch. He's the leader in a way. After Mance's execution, Jon decides to meet with the rest of the Free Folk to try to form an alliance with the Night's Watch. This would be a first in history, since they've always been at war. So this decision is far from unanimous among the Watch. But Jon is determined, and he goes beyond the wall once again to negotiate with the wildlings. But during the discussions, no one manages to set their ego aside to reach a solid agreement. So, it's their common enemies who will force them to unite. The White Walkers make their appearance and interrupt the negotiations with a tidal wave of undead attacking Jon and the wildlings. And while they're trying to evacuate the village, a White Walker joins the fray. The situation was already desperate, but now it's downright suicide. He looks invincible. Swords literally shatter against him. Let's move on. But against Jon Snow's sword, the Walker explodes into 1,000 pieces. The Valyrian steel of his sword seems to have something to do with it. And just as he finally manages to escape with the last boats, a terrifying scene unfolds before him. The Night King stares him straight in the eyes and raises hundreds of thousands of corpses as undead. Jon realizes that humanity will have to face death itself. The survivors finally arrive at the Night's Watch, traumatized by what they've seen. One evening, while Jon is torturing himself over how to deal with the White Walkers, he is summoned by some of his brothers from the Watch. But it was a trap. and some of the watch betrayed him because they couldn't stand having to salute a wildling. They all stab Jon until he collapses to the ground. Stannis' end is also approaching. They are completely blocked by the cold and the snow. Melisandre then suggests to Stannis that he sacrifice his own daughter so that the Lord of Light will stop the snow, and so he can finally advance on Winterfell. Even here, Stannis listens to his Red Priestess, and the snow really does stop. But the next day, more than half of his men desert, disgusted by their leader's thirst for power. Stannis' army is decimated at the gates of Winterfell by the Boltons. Only Melisandre manages to escape to join Davos, Stannis' advisor, who had been sent to the Night's Watch to ask for help before the battle. And while we're in the north, we can find Sansa at Winterfell. She is with Littlefinger, who reluctantly hands her over to the Boltons so she can marry Ramsay. All of this is to form an alliance with them, because Sansa is the key to giving them legitimacy over the north. But Ramsay is like a 0-point Joffrey. He doesn't hesitate to beat and abuse her. Sansa is desperately looking for a way to escape, and she learns, thanks to a maid, that the Starks still have allies in the north. In King's Landing, the situation is starting to slip out of Cersei's control. Tommen and Margaery have gotten married, making her the new queen, and she controls absolutely everything from behind the scenes. Cersei does not give up, and in a desperate attempt to regain power, she allies herself with a radical religious group operating in the capital. They are led by the one known as the High Sparrow, who orders the purging of all sinners. Margaery's brother Loras Tyrell is then arrested because of his homosexuality. Cersei's plan unfolds perfectly, as Margaery is also imprisoned for not denouncing her brother. But all of this will turn against Cersei, as she too will be arrested for incestuous relations. She will be locked up and mistreated for days on end. She has no choice but to confess her sin in order to see her son Tommen again. For that, she must undergo a long walk of shame, all the way to the Red Keep, naked in front of all the people who are there to judge her. She is then released, but mocked by the entire capital. And despite that, a trial will still be held against her. On the other continent, in Braavos, Arya progresses in her training as a faceless man and receives her first mission. However, in Season 6, but she decides to do as she pleases, captured by other kills the King's Landing royal guard. You're starting to know personal revenge. She plays her trump card again. To punish her, burns all the many-faced god, makes her blind, and emerges unscathed. The young Stark becomes a beggar of all the Dothraki in the city. In Meereen, she stands before Daenerys them tries her best to control the pro-slavery faction. She is back in Meereen. She is forced to reverse many of the laws, and her return was sorely needed. But it seems that the more she goes back on her decisions, she turns the tide of the pro-slavery faction demands. She recovers all the ships. Tyrion, she now has her army separated from Varys, the Dothraki, and ships. Perhaps at just the right moment, she can officially head to Westeros. He meets to reclaim the Iron Throne. And even though he's a Lannister, as her first destination, she can't help but symbolically choose Dragonstone. So she decides where the Targaryens first set foot in Westeros. And while she is attending the kingdom of the Seven Crowns, the pro-slavery group, and she is not the only one heading for Westeros, begins a massacre. Arya makes up for lost time. Everyone, the many-faced god, to regain her sight. Daenerys. But she deserts just as the queen is surrounded. She begins her revenge, to his mother's starting with Walder Frey, burns all her enemies. She wears the face of one of his servants to kill him by surprise, far from Meereen, and all his supporters. In her absence as well. Tyrion has finally avenged her brother with the help of King in the north, the leader in the capital. Sullied. Tommen is manipulated by the High Sparrow, an advisor whom Daenerys he makes trial by combat illegal, which dooms his own mother in her trial. Cersei has realized that her son is being manipulated, and that power is slipping away from her. So, on the day of the trial, while everyone gathers at the Sept, the king is kept in the Red Keep. Cersei's absence doesn't worry them too much, the High Sparrow, because he is convinced he controls everything. But Margaery knows Cersei very well, and she realizes that something is wrong. Cersei stands in the Red Keep, watching the Great Sept from afar, and puts her plan into action. She detonates all the stores of wildfire hidden in the underground tunnels. The explosion leaves no survivors. Still powerless, Tommen witnesses this horrific scene, and he will never recover from it. On the Night's Watch side, everything seems lost from the start, and the threat of the White Walkers will likely be much harder to face without Jon. Davos makes a last-ditch effort. He asks Melisandre if she has any final way to save Jon. She isn't sure of anything, but she tries an incantation to the Lord of Light. But of course nothing happens. His allies see their last hope vanish and leave, one by one, the room. But after a long silence, Jon finally opens his eyes. The Lord of Light has brought him back from the dead, and he doesn't do this by chance. So Jon begins his second life by executing all the traitors. And now that he has given his first life to the Night's Watch, revelation will change everything from his oath.
He wants to leave the Night's
the new
Watch,
three-eyed
but
raven,
at that very
using
moment,
his new powers,
Sansa arrives
is
at
going
the
to
wall.
discover a horrifying
She
truth
escaped
about
from
his father's
Winterfell
sister.
after Ramsay killed her
Her
father,
name
Lord
was
Bolton,
Lyanna Stark.
to reclaim his place.
We see her
After
giving
all
birth
these years,
to the child.
they finally see
The
each other
child was the
again.
result of
So
her
there is only
relationship
one thing
with
left
Rhaegar
to do.
Targaryen,
Take back their
Daenerys'
home by
late older
force.
brother, and Viserys.
Winterfell. They have the
A
support
much
of the
younger
wildlings,
Ned Stark is at
but
her
they are too
bedside.
few in number.
He
So
witnesses
Sansa
the
tries
last
to
breath
rally
of
as
his
many
sister
Northerners as
and the
possible.
Targaryen
But
child.
while they are preparing,
The
a
true
letter
legitimate
arrives and
heir to
tells
the
them
throne
that
has
Rickon,
just been
their
born.
little brother,
But
is
you
Ramsay's
probably know him
hostage
better by
and
another
the new
name.
Lord Bolton. The battle
Lyanna's
of the
final
bastards
wish was to
begins.
make Ned
Jon
swear to
and his
protect
army
her child
stand
from
ready,
Robert,
even though they are outnumbered.
because the child's
Ramsay,
existence directly
Beverly
threatens
sadist,
Robert's claim
allows
to the
Rickon to
Iron
run to
Throne.
his brother. He sees
With
his
this
little
terrible
brother in the
information
distance
that will
running
shake
toward
all
him.
7 kingdoms,
He runs to try
Bran
to save
then
him,
sets out for
but Ramsay
Winterfell.
had planned everything.
But
An
after
arrow
their victory
pierces
over
Rickon's
the
heart,
Boltons,
and he
the
collapses
Northerners
in
made
Jon's
Jon the new
arms.
king in the
He
north.
finds himself alone.
So when Bran arrives,
facing the entire
Jon is
Bolton
absent.
army, he draws his sword.
Shortly before, the
An
Night's
army
Watch
for
had
a single
received a
man.
raven from
Jon's
Sam,
entire
who was
cavalry
training to
arrives
become a
as
maester at the
reinforcements,
Citadel.
and the battle begins.
He informs
as
them that there is a
expected,
huge
everything
stockpile
goes
of dragon
very
glass at
badly.
Dragonstone.
The Stark army gets
the
surrounded,
famous substance
and
that
just
can
as
kill
death
White
seems to be
Walkers,
the only outcome,
and was discovered by the
Littlefinger
first men.
sees Sansa.
So
the
Jon
woman
is
he
on
has
his way
always
to meet
loved,
Daenerys
Catelyn
and
Stark,
form an alliance with her.
and thanks to him,
But if
the men
his
of
true
the Vale
identity were
arrive
to
to
be
the rescue
revealed,
and
it
turn
could
the
change
tide of the
everything.
battle. Jon finds
It's
Ramsay
even
inside
Arya's turn to
Winterfell
return to
and beats
Winterfell.
him up for all the crimes
She
he has
finally
committed.
reunites with Sansa
Sansa
and helps
ultimately
her
leaves
govern.
Ramsay to be devoured
Naturally,
by his own dogs.
this interferes
the battle
with
is won,
Littlefinger's romantic
and the Starks
plans.
are back in Winterfell.
In a desperate attempt, he tries to turn the Stark sisters against each other. But after all these years spent with manipulators and sadists, they immediately see through his scheme and have him executed. The Starks get yet another revenge, this time in the name of Ned Stark. On Daenerys' side, she fights her first battles against Cersei in Westeros. But after suffering several defeats, she decides to intervene herself to prove her power with her dragons. Daenerys begins to show no mercy and doesn't hesitate to quickly burn her enemies, even when they are already defeated. Back at Dragonstone, she finally meets Jon Snow and ends up falling in love with him. But what she doesn't know is that Jon is actually her nephew and the legitimate heir to the Iron Throne. This revelation will surely change everything in the final season of Game of Thrones. And that's it for this recap of the first 7 seasons. I hope you enjoyed it and that it helped you get ready for the final season. Thank you for watching, and see you soon for more adventures in Westeros.